Hi, everybody. I'm Amina Cooper, Forecast Public Arts Current Change Lab Research Fellow with another interview in conjunction with Forecast's newest issue of Forward magazine. I've had the pleasure of curating the current issue's Public Art Now section, where Jessica's work is featured. Jessica Gaynell Moss is an artist, independent curator, and arts consultant to institutions and private clients. She has an extensive background in program management, production and fabrication, nonprofit leadership, grant writing, community engagement, education, and the advancement of equitable development. Jessica is committed to developing innovative, ethical, and responsible solutions to improve the conditions that directly affect Black people, women, and underrepresented artists. As an arts worker and consultant, Jessica has experience with a diverse roster of institutions, including the Joan Mitchell Center, the City of Pittsburgh, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Jessica received a bachelor's in fine arts from Carnegie Mellon University, a master's in arts administration, policy, and management from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and a master's in studies of the law from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. We're so pleased to be in conversation with her, and I hope you enjoyed this interview. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you 5 quick questions that I'm asking all of our artists. And the first question is, how would you describe your art for public art or for public and community space?
Hmm. Uh, okay, well, first, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. Thank you. It was great to hear that introduction that you just provided. You've done so much and you're doing so much, and it's great to be in company with you. So thank you again for having me.
Of course.
And thanks Forecast and that whole team, for coordinating this. I think it's really awesome. Um, okay, and so when I think about this project in particular, the roll up CLT. CLT is short for Charlotte because it's located in a historically and predominantly Black community called Camp Green, which is on the west side of Charlotte, if you're familiar with the geography. Anyway, the birth of the roll up came because of void. There was a very clear gap in the service of artists. And I feel like so much of my work is about specifically that, being in service of the artists and our arts community. And we have the academy, of course. There are like programs that begin for my daughter's age at like 20 months, up until like continued learning forever. And that is definitely a route that you go, but it's not the only route. And I saw that there were residencies, right? Like this is a part of the ecosystem. But they were often things that artists had to pay for, or really short term, or you were plucked from a community and placed somewhere that just created a disconnect or tension. It wasn't always a right fit. And so I saw this void as an opportunity to create a project that supports specifically Black contemporary artists with time, space, and money, as many other residencies do. But we're providing $15,000 to $30,000 for 6 months. We provide our artists with transportation, a food and meal stipend. There is a supply and material budget. It is really like, what would your dream residency be? And there's not an ask in this program. A lot of other residencies that our artist colleagues participate in, you result with a body of work or something like this. The only ask is that while you are residing in this space, in this Black community with these Black people, that you're a good neighbor. And sometimes that can involve your practice. Sometimes that, it could just be a space that you chill and consider as a sabbatical for 6 months. And so the goal with this space was really to provide as much flexibility for the artist who's in residence to be able to accommodate their specific needs. And so it has taken a lot of different shapes. That's why maybe it's a little hard to answer that question. Because it is so tailored to the individual artist that it is serving at that specific time.
Wonderful. Such an amazing project.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, question number 2. Why do you choose to work in public and community spaces?
I mean, this one's hard too. I don't feel like it's a choice. Maybe it's that. um, I don't know, in our work, it often feels like a duty or like a responsibility. Like I have such care for my community and my cohort of other artists and makers that it is about extending the assets or the offerings that we do have to each other, right? And hoping that they become reciprocal relationships, that there's always a give and a take. And so I don't feel like this was like necessarily even something that you can study. I don't know. I think it's just like or I came into it in a way that felt very fluid and organic. Um, you know, as you said earlier in our conversation, I started with a painting practice, and then it became this sort of curiosity about business, which then grew into this interest in law and legal practices, and like this trajectory is not straight by any means, but it felt like at each time I was like entering this new channel, it was like, well, what tools can I gain to put in my tool belt so that it can be even stronger to support our community. Like that's really where this legal practice comes in. Folks always
Right.
ask about that. And it's like, I mean, send me your contract. I'll read it and I'll find questions that maybe you hadn't thought about asking. Um, or like, let's talk about these deals that you're making with galleries that want to represent you. Like, I'm happy to have these conversations with folks who are in our cohort, because I feel like often that is not, it's not provided, it's not a norm. Like, where do you find this information? And if it did exist, it's often like you have to pay for it. It's just, can we create so much more access to this knowledge? That's really I think that's the responsibility that I have in this work.
What do you find is the greatest challenge working within the public art realm, and the most sort of satisfying element of working in this space?
um, I'd say the most challenging is um, the historical exclusion of resources that have been available to us in this sector. I think so many folks are really interested in public art, but they don't have a point of entry. Um, so I'll say that's the most challenging. What's the most rewarding is folks like you and I have an opportunity to really have a hand in changing that. You know, I'm working right now with the Office of Public Art, which is a subsidiary of the Greater Pittsburgh Arts Council in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I'm working with their team, which is so dope, of two amazing women, Sally Ann and Divya, to develop a new grant stream that specifically will fund Black artists who are interested in entering into the public art realm.
Wonderful.
And it's a small budget to develop the program, which means that the grants that we're offering are also small. But what I did, Amina, and I'm really excited about, is small grants under $600, because then the artists don't get taxed on them. They don't have to claim any additional monies, right? So it's a small grant, but really just meant to kickstart a public art project. And it can be something like so small, so simple, it's just a little bit of coins. But hopefully also it can create entry into more public art opportunities. Or, we're also thinking of the network that we're creating in this region, right? And of these emergent artists who've never had this kind of opportunity before. So that part feels real special, right? And it's not even about Jessica Moss, it's about all of these folks whose name we don't know,
Right.
who are actively doing this work, who are making the thing, but have not had yet any access into the level in which they should be at, to opportunities that they should be applying for, but often they don't know about, or they don't consider themselves an artist with an A, you know, like a capital A or whatever. Like, it's just, there have been historical barriers. And so it feels incredibly rewarding to be able to participate um, in removing those barriers. Okay.
Okay, is there an artist or administrator or scholar that has particularly inspired your work?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so many. Um, I didn't know what I was doing. It just, again, happened really organically. And it wasn't until I learned about the work of Theaster Gates that a lot of things began to click for me. Like the dedication to community, being in service of our artists, and the making process with the artists, as well as about thinking about space, like Black space, our spaces, and how they can be available to our communities. All of these things, you know, the Aster executes beautifully and gracefully. And I will always be in awe of his work. And so having an opportunity to work from him and like study under him during my time in Chicago in graduate school was phenomenal. And I consider Theaster as not only this like art world demigod, right, but as like a friend and a colleague, you know, in doing this work. And I also appreciate Theaster so much because whenever folks refer to his work as social practice, which, right, is so academic, there's like this kind of rejection of it because, you know, he has said Black people have been doing this since the beginning of time, right? And y'all just want to call it this. You want to put a name on it, you know? And I respect that immensely because I've, you know, like we have been doing, this is just a part of our practice, right? Like creating spaces that feel safe for us and doing that by using food, by using art, by using crafts, right? Like thinking about how the things that we make are the things that bring us together is just something that is inherently Black. And so I appreciate that resistance to a lot of terminology that is placed upon us and not chosen by us. But there are also, you know, infinite other people. My art and life mentor of over 10 years, Ayanna Moore, who currently practices in Chicago and Pittsburgh, has been incredibly relevant to my practice. I think being in undergrad at a predominantly white institution, seeing a queer Black woman who was presenting work about identity politics was just like so important to me. And beyond just the representation, like the work is dope. And so Ayanna will always just be an incredible mentor and someone who I admire in her work. And then there are other, I'm trying to think of all of the different disciplines. You know, there are so many talented Black women arts administrators who I really admire. I'll use this opportunity to uplift Celeste Smith and Shonda McDeal, who are at the Pittsburgh Foundation and the Heinz Endowment, who do such amazing work to get Black artists paid and compensated for their labor, which is so important. You know, this list can go forever. All of my like friends and collaborators, folks who I do projects with, like Alicia Wormsley. Alicia, I mean, I want to tell you about this. Alicia and I work on a project called Sybil Shrine. It's a residency that we created in 2019 that specifically supports Black moms who are artists. And our current resident and artist is Renee Cox, but we also support 70 other moms in residence. And this means we are paying them, we're providing supply material, budget, places to live. Mommy wanted a bubble bath and an Airbnb for one night. We hooked it up, like these types of things that really demonstrate care. And Alicia is the creative director, but also the brains and the visionary behind this work, and so so much respect for her and her.
What advice do you have for a Black artist interested in entering the public art field?
I think, you sent me these in advance. I should have a better, a more, I don't know, quick answer to this one, but this is the hardest one.
Yeah.
Because it's trying to prioritize.
There's so many things. It's like I
There's
will tell
so
you
many
this.
things
Yeah,
I want to just
list.
download into you.
It's
Okay,
probably
here
not
it
a
is.
question.
I think really what it is to, maybe this is just not even to Black artists, or to just, maybe this is just people in general, but we can use it within this channel. There is this fear of failure that I feel is just acts as a blockade to our success.
Yeah.
And like that fear is often imaginary. And it prohibits us from moving forward. We stop ourselves from that growth. And so if I can offer advice, it is to receive the fear, and to, what I am trying to do is gain the superpower of being able to navigate through it. Because there is always the hope or the goal or whatever it is you're trying to achieve on the other side.